Two tropical systems that I'm tracking, one bringing impacts to our area right now, the other will bring impacts starting this weekend. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. Good to see you on this Thursday afternoon. I hope you're doing well. Coming up in this video, we're going to deep dive into our two tropical invest areas, the impacts it's already bringing to portions of our area, and then the impacts it could bring this weekend and even deep into next week. Hope you caught the update video I did earlier today. Of course, as things get more active in our area, I'll be doing multiple video updates a day, so make sure you have the notifications on. Now, we are going to get into the weeds here about Invest 94 in the Western Caribbean, all of the heavy rain that is bringing there, and what it's going to be doing as it gets closer to Central America and the Yucatan, and of course the latest on Invest 95L, now with an 80% chance of development as it will try and traverse the Western Atlantic and move closer to the Lesser Antilles as we get into the weekend. We're going to get into all of that in just a second, but right now, of course, here at Meteo Mundo, we can look at all of this live information, and I want to talk about what's been happening in our area on this Thursday because there have been impacts, especially by Invest 94L, with some very heavy rain and some stormy weather for the Western Caribbean. Then we're going to deep dive into each of those invest areas. As we get started, I love to hear from you. Drop it in the comments section below where you're viewing from and what the weather has been like. And if you're viewing from places like the Cayman Islands and Jamaica, it's been an extremely wet day. We had wind and dust in Jamaica yesterday, then late last night, and basically all day long, we've had waves of heavy rain moving across the island. The numbers that you see, those are wind gusts in miles an hour. So we have our broad center of circulation here just off the Honduras coastline. Still the opportunity as this invest moves off to the north and to the west to develop as it gets closer to the Yucatan and far northern sides of Central America. This is generally going to stay a relatively disorganized system. But that being said, look at the enormous amount of rain it is driving into our area. So in the here and the now for my friends in Jamaica, we continue to see ample tropical moisture move through. Some of you have commented in the last couple of videos how it just really hasn't stopped raining on this Thursday. So let me know in the comments section below what you're seeing, but certainly the opportunity at least for some isolated flooding. Obviously there's been beneficial rain, but a lot of it as well. Fair lightning strikes. It's really kicked up the sea conditions on the southern coast. So again, it's a wet forecast here on the east side of this disturbance, and more moisture will continue to rotate in with south to southeast winds. Additional storms are developing over the Cayman Islands right now. Georgetown had a 38-mile-an-hour wind gust. Very heavy downpours expected in that area. And again, more moisture feeding in. Storms are beginning to blossom over portions of Cuba. Look in just the last hour or so how healthy these storms have gotten with some very heavy rain. We do have a little bit of a kind of a divergence here in the atmosphere north and east, and that has allowed these storms to very efficiently develop over the Bahamas here in a very short order. So we are getting some good downpours right now, central and the southeast Bahamas, from Andros to New Providence there. Let's zoom into that area real quick. Nassau starting to get some of that activity. You can see that moving across the island. More rain right now over Andros, but that could be headed towards New Providence and Eleuthera and Long Island and Cat Island and Exuma, back down towards the Acklins as well. Again, good flare-up of thunderstorms in this area. It's a little bit more spotty in the far northwest Bahamas, but we are seeing some storms develop. We had a couple of storms develop over the central sides of Grand Bahama. All of this is moving off relatively quickly to the east. And again, this does spiral into kind of a leading band, which is going up towards Bermuda, where they've had more active weather today and some winds of over 30 miles an hour. Now, there is some Saharan dust, obviously, in play when you get a little bit farther off towards the east, and that's why again Hispaniola's drier for today. It's going to be really isolated for storms across Haiti and the Dominican Republic and even the Turks and Caicos on this Thursday afternoon. So about a 20% chance, otherwise very hot, hazy, and humid. It's the same scenario for portions of Puerto Rico as well, where again we'll get some isolated storms, and you see some of those developing on the southwest side of the island, Mayaguez down towards Ponce. It's been very fresh winds. All of these winds across across the islands, including the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, around 20 to 25 miles an hour at the hour. And it's been a relatively dry day for the Lesser Antilles in general here. And again, we've had some wind gusts from time to time. Now, of course, the area in red is the development area from Invest 95L that we'll get into. Just to make it a little bit easier here, let me swipe that off real fast. But again, it's been a dry day. The moisture axis is well off towards the west now. An isolated shower or two could pop up into this area, especially on the mainland. Suriname, Guyana, and Venezuela could see a few storms. ABC Islands, again, the moisture is just off toward your south or just off towards your west. And we're seeing the Central American gyre really coming back into play now, guys, where again, now we have southeast winds in the southwest Caribbean, and these storms are really flaring up. So more heavy rain is expected. And look, I believe the overall story of what Invest 94L is going to be is a very wet storm for the Yucatan, for Central America, and portions of the Western Caribbean. So that's what it looks like right in the here and the now. So we'll get into the forecasting of both of those invests coming up. As we get that started, thank you so much for liking this video. If you haven't subscribed to Meteo Mundo and you want your latest forecast and all the details in the tropics, click that subscribe button right now. Please share this video with any family and friends you think might get something out of it. Thank you for those who have become members. It's just 99 cents a month. You can click that join button right now. Thanks for those who have hit the super things and been able to support me in that way. You can also find additional ways to support me here at Meteo Mundo in the description below. Okay, so let's talk about kind of all of the ingredients here of this tropical soup and why we have this very healthy invest in the Central Atlantic. First of all, ocean temperatures are, again, extremely warm for this time of the year. They're running in the upper 20s to even the lower 30s Celsius for a good portion of the Atlantic Basin and all of our area. Look at all of the browns here, well east of the Lesser Antilles, and then through the Caribbean and the western side of the Atlantic and into the Gulf of Mexico. So these sea surface temperatures readily support tropical development. There's a lot of wind shear typically in the main development region of the Atlantic this time of the year, but I'll talk about why that's not a factor with Invest 95L. But as I mentioned, the first one we're going to get into here is going to be Invest 94L. So again, 30% chance of development from the Hurricane Center. Latest as of the 2 p.m. update from the Hurricane Center on this Thursday, pressure 1,008 millibars, winds are 30, moving west or just slightly north of west at around 15 miles an hour. Look, there's a very high likelihood that the strongest this will ever get would be a weak tropical depression, okay? But it's going to be an elongated area of very healthy rain. Storms, landslides, mudslides, localized flash flooding will all come along for the ride as this system works its way north and west, closer to coastal Belize, southern sides of Yucatan, Quintana Roo, and then on over towards the southwest Gulf of Mexico. So anywhere either before landfall here, again, Belize, Yucatan Peninsula, or then into the southwest Gulf of Mexico, we could have a wrapped up system. But again, it's only around a 30% chance. Still though, with this Central American gyre in play, it's really all about the extremely heavy rainfall that is likely out of this. And we can see bursts of convection already beginning to really flare up here, especially right now on the south and the eastern side, but there is more moisture coming back into the northwest side. So places like Roatan and Belize City will get onto the act. It's actually dried out a bit for Cancun for today. That's good news because this surge of moisture, again, will be coming back in to this area. So let's swing on over to the models here. We're going to take a look at the GFS model first, and we'll deep dive into these areas. So again, back into this region over the next couple of days here. And actually, let me do one thing real quickly. I had it extended to a long period of time, but I don't need that for this system. So let's make it a little bit tighter in nature. So the first thing I want you to notice here on the GFS model is we never get a completely wrapped up system, okay? We might have some tropical depression or very weak tropical storm force winds in this central dense overcast, but it's the enormity of the rain that'll be moving across the area. There's probably a little bit better chance that this might try and wrap up in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, but again, the forecast would then drive it quickly into Mexico rather than lifting up any farther off to the north. That being said, for the next couple of days, Jamaica, High alert for very heavy rainfall. Same thing for the Cayman Islands. That then shifts starting late tomorrow and through the weekend for all of the Yucatan and most of Central America, because even on the far south side of this, these southerly winds are going to bring heavy rainfall to even portions of Panama and Costa Rica, but certainly Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Belize will be in for the potential for some extremely heavy rain. So you can just see again that system moving in. Let's switch over to the winds. And I'm going to loop this up, same time frame here. I'm going to take off that formation zone real quick. And again, yesterday, if you tuned in, we never saw anything wrap up here on the GFS model. You can see the winds are going to be very fresh. First of all, anywhere north of the circulation, obviously we're going to have easterlies with the counterclockwise winds. So there's going to be onshore winds, especially up towards Cancun and Cozumel. That is going to bring in some extremely high sea conditions as well. We've already seen that in Jamaica today and the Cayman Islands, and it's just going to be a really rough go for boaters here throughout all of the Northwest Caribbean. So let's take a look at some of the wind speeds here. If I back this up, and by the way, let me get on this model time frame so you guys can clearly see that. Apologize for not getting that on a little bit earlier. So as we look at this, again, today is the 27th, right, Rusty? Yes, it is. So Friday's the 28th. So as we get into tomorrow, by the way, I think you can imagine why my days are getting all kind of jumbled up here. Well, as we get into tomorrow, let's take a look at what these winds look like. Again, we're close to supporting tropical storm force winds. It just, do we get a closed center of circulation here? Well, I think we're going to have some healthy winds trying to drive into the Yucatan, which could be approaching tropical storm force, at least in gusts. And again, this would be approaching the area later tomorrow. So you can see those whites. Those are going to be winds of around 40 miles an hour, or a little bit higher, pushing into the northern side of Central America, right over the Yucatan, and then off into the southwest Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, it's going to be eroded a bit with the land interaction, but potentially picking back up a little bit more as we get back into the southwest Gulf. I'm going to extend this out just a couple more days so we can get the full loop of these winds in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. And look, again, if this is going to develop in the southwest Gulf, it's going to have to do so at about a 24 to maybe 36-hour time frame, because all the models then drive it into North Mexico in a hurry. There's not much of a gain in latitude here. It's going to be moving more west than anything else. But again, still the possibility of some development out of 94L. It's going to be a very heavy rainmaker. It's going to be a wind maker along the Yucatan Peninsula, whether this is a wrapped up system or not. And again, you can see in these whites, we're pushing winds of 35 to maybe 40 miles an hour, all the way down towards Roatan 25, San Pedro, on over towards Orange Walk there, Belize City. Again, fresh easterly winds here. Center of circulation would be located south, and then all of this would be an easterly wind on the northern side. So that's kind of the latest with 94L. Be monitoring the situation. We can look at rain here. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to look at rain totals for both systems coming up in just a minute. I do want to now get into 95L. All right, so that's the latest on 94L. This is 95L way out here in the central Atlantic. Latest information on this is that it's moving off towards the west as well. Pressure is about 1,011 millibars. Again, relatively healthy tropical wave. This is the enhanced satellite imagery. We can clearly see that there's already some outflow and there's been a flare-up of some thunderstorms here. Let's take a look at the visible satellite imagery. I'd love to show you this imagery as well. So it's just going to take a second to load up. Going to take a second to load up, and we can clearly see a couple of things. First of all, we have some decent outflow, and we already have some storms developing ahead of this. We have moisture off towards the south and some slightly drier air to the north. Now, of course, we're actually losing daylight here in this part of the world, so that's why that is coming down. But we can take a look at these shadows. You can clearly see some of the enhancement of those storms. When I switch back over to the water vapor imagery here, let me do that real quick. Couple of things I want to note with this, all right? First of all, it's already kind of developing its own moisture axis and its own moisture region. There is slightly drier air to the north, but as I mentioned in the video earlier today, it's actually not going to be a problem. What we have is an area of mid-level high pressure right to the north of where this is trying to develop. So obviously you get your clockwise winds around a high. So we have the forward movement of our Invest 95L towards the west which is of course easterly winds pushing it, and then we have this high just to the north with easterly winds. So there's no wind shear. They're moving in the same direction. They're moving in concert. Typically speaking, we have some west winds in this area this time of the year, which really limits any kind of tropical wave formation, which is why we normally look this in the August, September, October timeframe for development in the central Atlantic. But with very little wind shear in this high, we'll be moving in concert with this invest. More than likely, it's going to continue to provide conducive for development. And the models have picked up on that, the fact that there is very little wind shear here in this. And so that's why the intensity of the models have come up in concert with this as well. So let's take a look at this. How about we take a look at how far it is away from the Barbados and Windward Island area here. So I'm going to draw it out. Let me do this. Hang on one second, guys. I've got to flatten the map here so we can actually see how far it is away. Okay, so right now it's about 1,600 miles away from Barbados and the southern side of the Lesser Antilles. Sorry about the jump there, but you get the idea that we still have some time to monitor this, but it's an extremely healthy system at this point. Now, we do have our tropical models that are running on this because we now have an invest, so let's bring those on. And compared to yesterday, or excuse me, earlier this morning, there hasn't been much of a change in the models. They're all still relatively tightly clustered into the southern side of the Lesser Antilles. If anything, there's been just the slightest jog to the north, but there is still a very tight cluster for places like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, and St. Lucia. There's a few models that are a little bit farther to the north, and there's a couple of outliers that are a little bit farther off to the south as well, but pretty tightly clustered here, a few days out. Now, again, we don't even have a tropical depression yet, so things can and will change with this, but this is a very impressive looking tropical wave at this point in time, and it wouldn't surprise me if within the next 24 hours we get a tropical depression. And again, both the European model and the GFS models have raised their intensity of this to at least produce a tropical storm. So there is a high likelihood that we get tropical storm barrel out of this as it moves closer to the Lesser Antilles late into the weekend and early on Monday. That's what it looks like in the here and the now. Let's take a look at the models. So again, back out to this view. And if you haven't hit that like button yet, I absolutely appreciate you doing that. Let's load it back up here. I'm going to bring back on the reflectivity. Then we're going to look at the winds. Of course, with this one, I do need to go about a little bit farther out in time. So at this point in time, because we don't have a tropical depression, we don't have a tropical storm, there's no watches or warnings, I have seen nothing of an official capacity from any island nation here in the Lesser Antilles discussing anything more than we're monitoring the situation and we'll provide you updates. If you live in these areas in red, I certainly implore you to continue to follow your local officials. And of course, I've got you updated here at Meteo Mundo as well. But we've got a little bit of time to watch, but not a lot. I mean, this is Thursday, and more than likely this system will begin to impact the area beginning on Sunday. Now, there's a little slug of moisture ahead of it. We're going to get some downpours here as we get into our Saturday, but that is not the system. This is it coming in right now. So this is Sunday the 30th. The time frame would be 11 p.m. So we're going to start to see, based on the GFS model, the approach of whatever this is going to become. Again, most of the models have this as a tropical storm. Some of them do have this as a hurricane, and I don't say that lightly, but again, that's just what the model data is indicating, and we'll look at that. It's not out of the question that this becomes a minimal hurricane. Most models keep this as a tropical storm, but I don't want to understate what the models have been kind of showing here over the last 12 to 24 hours. So again, on the GFS model, we have a healthy looking system moving across the southern side of the Lesser Antilles. If there's been a shift slightly in the model over the last 6 to 12 hours, it's slightly farther off towards the north, but not by much. I mean, the same areas that I mentioned in the morning video will be the highest impacted areas. That would be Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, maybe up towards Martinique and Dominica, Grenada to the south, potentially Trinidad and Tobago, but generally to the north is the most impacts, with the easterly winds continuing to drive in the same direction that the storm would be going. Now, obviously, this is not going to just fall apart as it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. Down the road, we have to keep a close eye on what that's going to end up doing for the Eastern and the Central Caribbean as well. It's too far in the future to get into any specifics. Someone asked me earlier in one of the videos, should I be concerned? My answer for any areas outside the Lesser Antilles off to the west, don't be concerned, but have a very vigilant eye on what's going to be happening and make sure you stay updated with what this is. So again, looking at the broad perspective, here it comes in late Sunday and into Monday. And there is another tropical wave behind it, but if it's following the same path, we get that cold water ocean upwelling and it shouldn't be nearly as significant. So we need to talk about this one. That's what it looks like, and obviously very impressive on the reflectivity from the GFS model. Let's look at the wind fields, and then I'm going to take you step by step through the European model as well. So let's see. Okay, it is loading up. I'm going to take off the formation zone because on this product it's just a little bit easier to see. Couple of notes. These are surface winds, sustained surface winds. These are not gusts, okay? So this would be sustained surface winds here on the GFS model. And the inclination of the GFS model has been only to get a little bit stronger and stronger. When I showed you this time yesterday, it had a tropical storm with winds of around 50 to 55 miles an hour. Now we'll get into what this is going to show right now. When I click this, it does jump back in time, so I have to re-click it and bring it in. So again, you can see it's a little bit closer to approach to Barbados, but friends, this forecast can and will change, okay? Don't look at what I'm showing you right now and go, oh, that's absolutely gonna happen. It's going right over Barbados. No, obviously there's a lot of inherent things that can still come into play here. We don't even have a closed center of circulation yet. It's kind of the blessing and the curse of being able to look at all these models. So you get the idea that the GFS is stronger, and it is bringing the potential for minimal hurricane into the Lesser Antilles late Sunday and into Monday. This would be early on Monday morning at 11 a.m. So we have to, acknowledge that. And there's your tropical storm force wind field in white. But again, 55 miles an hour yesterday, around 70 to 75 this morning, now even a little bit higher in a couple of spots. I can say this, the European model is not as strong. So that's one good piece of information. But there are still some ensembles of the European model that bring in a minimal hurricane as well. Obviously, for these areas, we need to keep a very close watch. And again, this does hold together at least through portions of the Eastern and Central Caribbean. That being said, there's very little confidence in what happens after it moves to the Lesser Antilles. The models diverge in very significant ways. All the global models diverge, both in intensity and track. So I don't have a lot of confidence speaking beyond the Lesser Antilles right now. But my friends in the Lesser Antilles need to keep a very, very watchful eye on this system. So again, that's what the GFS model shows. Stair-stepping it again. Let me move out of the way here just a little bit. So late Sunday night, early Monday morning, into the lunchtime hour here, and then a little bit into the deeper part of Monday. This is slightly slower as well, by the way. Last couple of model runs were a little bit quicker, bringing it through the islands on Monday morning. This now holds it back a little bit until the afternoon and evening hours as well. Okay, let's look at the European model. You're now looking at wind speeds. This is very slow stair step. I did this on purpose. You can see the center of circulation is slightly south of where we have the GFS model. It is also weaker in general as well. Again, these are sustained winds. We do have a closed center of circulation. The European model, as a deterministic model, has this as a tropical storm. So this would be a tropical storm coming into the southern side of the Lesser Antilles about the same time frame, very late Sunday night into Monday morning and early Monday afternoon. This is a snapshot of the pressure Monday morning from the European model. We have a closed low, 1,004 millibars, again, supportive of tropical storm strength. There, of course, is Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, down towards Grenada. So this entire area, again, obviously would have to keep a very vigilant eye on this. But again, one snapshot. The European model has been relatively consistent as far as this being the potential track of this system over the last 24 hours. If we take a look at the extended view of the track, the black line is the ensemble mean. So it does take it through the Lesser Antilles and then deep into the Caribbean. And there's a lot of divergence after that, both in intensity and where it might be headed. Okay, some of them kind of steer it very quickly to the north, others drive it deep into the Northwest Caribbean. And I promise you, we've got plenty of time to keep an eye on what this becomes, again, more than likely Beryl, as it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. But just to show you that. Now, if we take a look at the intensity from the European model, if there's a slightly decent piece of news, I'm going to jump back on real quick. If you see this black line, that is the ensemble mean of the members that run on the European model. It is at tropical storm strength, and the average is 57 knots. This morning, it was 63 knots. It's not an appreciable drop in strength, but what I'm happy to say is that the latest model run for the European model doesn't make it any stronger. There are obviously some ensemble members that make it a hurricane that would be anywhere north of the green line, but most of the models keep that as a tropical storm, and that's what we want to see. I mean, obviously, it'd be very early in the year to have a hurricane develop in the Atlantic Basin. But, you know, we're talking about some things that are going to be somewhat unprecedented for us, guys. And again, the models are picking up on this. It's as simple as that. So let's talk about the areas that need to monitor this invest. It's all of the Lesser Antilles. In particular, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, the north coast of South America, including Nueva Esparta, and potentially down the road, places like the ABC Islands, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, Jamaica. But again, I don't want to get that far out because there's very little skill right now in the models with what they're trying to output beyond the Lesser Antilles. We'll get through our friends there first, and then we'll go from there. Okay, let's look at the rainfall totals. We'll start off in Central America and the Yucatan, because again, this is going to be a very wet system in this area here. You can see again an additional 4, 5, maybe 6+ inches of rain for a lot of areas. I think Cancun would be very lucky to just get another 1.5 inches. I think it's going to be a lot closer to the 4 and 5 inches here that we see through Belize. And again, there's going to be areas with heavier rain than this, right? We're just kind of looking at model averages. You can see that huge swath of rain near the center and as it tracks up to the north and to the west. So more rain coming here. More than likely, this is going to be in millimeters, over 100 millimeters in most spots. That's 4 inches of rain. I think another 4 to 6 inches of rain, 100 to 150 millimeters, absolutely not out of the question for a good chunk of Central America. I've mentioned it many times. The GFS model just has not picked up on the rain over Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. You guys are going to get more rain than this. I would expect several more inches. I don't expect a ton more rain for the Bahamas after today. You guys should be drying out a bit. And then we'll see some scattered storms run up through Bermuda as well. We're still going to get some pockets of heavier rain in Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. That'll be coming a little bit later in the day. And it's very clear to see the GFS model driving that rain. And again, pretty progressive system, but still 4, 5, 6 inches of rain there as well. We're going to look at the island by island rain chance here in just 1 second. Before we do so, I'm going to just throw on very, very quickly the NAM model as well, because as I've mentioned, I think it does a slightly better job in the Northwest Caribbean with what the rain is actually going to look like. So before we get into that island by island rain chance, let's bring up the NAM model very, very quickly for you here. Again, you can see it's just a little bit better to pull in this moisture across Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. I think it's just, you know, more of what's already happening and more of what I expect to. Now, that being said, beginning on Saturday for Jamaica, this system goes far enough west where you will begin to dry out a bit. And obviously anywhere north and east of that is still being impacted by some of the Saharan dust. So for Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, we'll start to see some energy move back in. Again, I've already mentioned that there's another quick wave coming in on Friday. You can see that there's no tropical development with that, but it is going to throw more moisture back into the greater Antilles. So rain chances going up there and for the northern side of the Leeward Islands as well, hopefully bringing a few showers to places like the ABC Islands as well. And then we'll see a few showers and storms developing through portions of the Bahamas, but it's going to be more scattered in nature. So not a ton more rain. Again, it'll be a little bit more isolated, but we've had some heavier downpours in the Bahamas today. Turks and Caicos, again, isolated, but where they get going, heavy rainfall and lightning will come along for the ride. Cuba's rain chances are higher the next couple days, down to a 50% chance on Saturday. Cayman Islands, 80% chance for today and tomorrow, 60% chance on Saturday. Belize City and Cancun and Cozumel, it's already wet. It's going to stay wet and get even wetter in some spots here on Friday and Saturday. So Jamaica, Rain across the island today, still an 80% chance for tomorrow, 60% chance on Saturday, still relatively dry the next several days in the Dominican Republic. Same thing for Puerto Rico, but improving rain chances starting again as we get late Saturday and into Sunday. U.S. and British Virgin Islands in that rapport as well. For Bermuda, we've had some rain today and some breezy conditions. That kind of situation sticks around through the weekend. Anguilla will start to see the rain chance improve. Of course, there's some haze in the sky as well. Montserrat, up to a 50% chance on Friday. Antigua and Barbuda, about the same scenario, improving rain chances. Again, this is not with Invest 95L. This is another tropical wave coming through very quickly. Barbados gets on the wetter side Saturday. Same thing for Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago as well. Nueva Esparta, we'll see improving rain chances there on the northern coast of Venezuela. And the ABC Islands, hey, at least we've got a 20% chance for some showers in your area. Okay, so back over to the broad perspective. Again, just one more time, friends. Invest 94L will watch all the heavy rain in the Western Caribbean, Central America, and the Yucatan Peninsula. A very healthy tropical wave, more than likely will become a tropical depression in the next 24 hours, and then tropical storm Beryl from there, and we'll all be monitoring the situation. A couple of things I've got you covered here at Meteo Mundo. I'm going to have another update on both invests coming your way tomorrow morning. I'll then have a full video Friday afternoon, and then we'll talk about our coverage plans for the weekend ahead as well. I appreciate you following me across all of our social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, and there's some very active weather, please do so at mymeteomundo@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you in the comments section below while you're down there. Thank you so much for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing. Friends, you have a great rest of your Thursday. I'll have an update on those invest areas tomorrow morning, and I'll see you then right here at Meteo Mundo.